He was born in Kentucky, raised in Indiana, and lived in Illinois. And this is what he said. This is what Abe Lincoln said. The dogmas of the quiet past are inadequate to the stormy present. The occasion is piled high with difficulty, and we must rise with the occasion. As our case is new, so we must think anew and act anew. We must disenthrall ourselves, and then we shall save our country.
Powerfully expressed in words and music, Aaron Copland's A Lincoln Portrait honors the spirit of our nation's 16th president, a spirit that lives today in those men and women whose lives of professional achievement and service to humanity are recognized each year by the Lincoln Academy of Illinois. Grounded in the traditions of the learned academies of Europe, the Lincoln Academy is unique among the 50 states in its structure and selection of laureates who have worn the Order of Lincoln since 1965. Its colors reflect the land of Lincoln, with red for the state bird, the cardinal, violet for the state flower, and green for the state tree, the oak. Each year, the Lincoln Academy takes pride in the state's young people by recognizing the outstanding students at each of Illinois' 4-year degree-granting colleges and universities. The Academy also honors the past through the establishment of the Hall of Fame of Historic Illinoisans, who came before the founding of the Academy, but nonetheless left their mark on our state.
Governor Edgar, laureates, both past and present, members of the Academy, and distinguished guests. Our Academy was founded as a nonprofit, nonpartisan, and self-funded entity. Its basic purpose is the conferring of the Order of Lincoln, the state's highest award, upon distinguished citizens of our state. They are selected by the Academy for their efforts in making outstanding contributions toward a better society.
Honored this year as laureates, an educator and lawyer whose leadership of one of the world's greatest museums of natural history has improved our understanding of ourselves and the world around us. A respected statesman and effective advocate for education at all levels. A scholar whom duty called to represent her nation before the world. A sports hero whose love of the game and fair play have inspired generations. And a scientist who believes science and technology are best used in the service of society.
The new laureates have been selected by a process that started early last year. They are to be honored by the state of Illinois and decorated with the Order of Lincoln by the governor, who also serves as president of the Academy. I ask that Marion Meyerson, a regent of the Academy, read the citation for Laureate Willard Boyd.
Willard Lee Boyd, Sandy, has a record of extraordinary achievements in so many areas that it is difficult to specify a category. An educator and a lawyer, a leader in many arts and cultural affairs, he is president of the Field Museum of Natural History in Chicago. Governor Edgar, it is my pleasure to present Willard L. Boyd as a laureate of the Lincoln Academy of Illinois.
Willard Boyd became president of the Field Museum of Natural History in 1981. Trained as a lawyer, he had a long and distinguished career in legal education and administration at the University of Iowa. Named university president in 1969, his tenure reflected a deep commitment to academic excellence, a profound concern for the individual, and an abiding respect for the rule of law. Boyd brought those qualities to the field on the brink of its second century as both a community and international center for research and learning about cultural understanding and the world's environments.
I suppose lawyers are very much concerned about how to resolve problems and resolve issues, and obviously that's what human life is about, and museums are about human life and human ideas. Basically, the interesting thing about a museum, as contrasted to a university where I came from, is that a museum really should be a community center, and we don't have any prerequisites for coming in. You don't have to have graduated from a certain program. You need not have taken a certain course, but we want everybody to go away with a greater sense of appreciation and understanding about environments and cultures.
Sandy has always stressed our crucial role as public servants, and I think that that worldview is something that he's tried to sort of permeate through this institution, and it's something that's very important for us to keep in mind. And I think that the Field Museum now, under his leadership, has really become a very outward-looking institution, and one that's sort of thoroughly dedicated to public service from many different directions.
In the 1980s, when I came, I said, this is a place of ideas, and everybody said, no, it's a place of objects. And I said, but the objects of nature give rise to human ideas about nature, and human ideas give rise to cultural objects, whether they are art, ceremonial, or technological. So this is a place of ideas based on objects. In our current strategic plan, we talk about connecting, and we talk about the interconnections within nature. What is the environment, the total environment of nature? Then we talk about the interconnections in cultures. What are the cultural connections? And then we talk about the museum connecting with its community and how we can be ever more effective in serving the community of Chicago and the community of Illinois.
Africa reflects the field's unique blend of scholarly expertise and community involvement. The environment, culture, traditions, and contributions to the Western Hemisphere and the United States are seen through the eyes of Africans and African Americans.
We brought people here to the museum to talk about the exhibit, to tour it before it was ready, to make contributions and comments on it. He was open. He was willing to make this an inclusive effort, not just to have some scholars come in and say what it was going to be, but to really have people involved in saying what they wanted the exhibit to mean, what they needed it to mean, for it to be helpful to them and what they did on a daily basis. I was excited about that process and pleased that he included us in.
The more people get to know each other, the more they understand each other and respect each other. So what we're trying to do is bring people together, and we have no agenda except we're trying to use these collections as an opportunity to talk about different cultures and really to try to understand why those cultures are as they are and what they mean to us, so that we tend to look at other cultures as being very different, and indeed they are, but they might be different as they deal with the same concerns that every other culture deals with.
The field inspires visitors of all ages to learn more about the natural world through engaging and enjoyable exhibits like the enormously popular DNA to Dinosaurs.
Well, I think we want them to come away with a sense of scientific inquiry, that you want to look at things, you want to study them, you want to be open-minded, and that the range of thought is very considerable, and that the range of time is very considerable. And many people, because of understandable presentations, Jurassic Park, a very exciting movie, but might come away thinking that there were people living at the time of dinosaurs, and there were no people living at the time of dinosaurs. And the Earth has a very long history and continues to change and evolve, and we are a part of that.
DNA to Dinosaurs aptly describes the wide-ranging scientific research of the Field Museum. This 100-million-year-old fossil fish is one of 20 million objects in the Field's collections, objects studied by scientists and scholars using the latest equipment and research techniques. Other researchers are exploring the very building blocks of life with global implications.
In that respect, it's unique. Most colleges and universities in America started their science programs in the 19th century around cabinets of natural history. As things moved to molecular biology, they did not focus as much on the collections. We have. Now what's happening is we are using those collections in different ways, using not only the systematic approach, but also the molecular approach, so that we have basically biochemical laboratories in the museum which do DNA sequencing. In fact, a high school volunteer here in the Second World War in zoology went on to share the Nobel Prize for DNA, and so as a result of his work, we are affected in how we now go about looking at environmental issues.
The research is used around the world.
We're understanding clearly of the important need for human development, but to do it in a way that is in the long range going to be sensible and not just an immediate economic gain that subsequently turns out to be an economic disadvantage, to say nothing of an environmental disadvantage.
Colleagues believe Willard Boyd's tenure at the field has not only left it stronger across the board, but they say he recognized very clearly that institutions must continue to evolve, much like the organisms they study, or risk extinction.
One way in which it's evolved has been to sort of coalesce around sort of two major subject matter themes, which I would argue will be two of the most important themes in the next century, and those are the two general issues of how we live with our environment and how we live together as people move from increasingly isolated to increasingly tightly coexisting cultural situations. I think that it's very important that we keep that in mind, and from our relevance will come our future in terms of support.
During the Columbian Exposition, when the Field Museum was founded, Frederick Jackson Turner pronounced that the American frontier had ended. Nevertheless, Americans remain a frontier people, restlessly pursuing new goals through new means. Every Illinois community, large or small, takes pride in its local museums, historic sites, and natural preserves. These centers remind us of our frontier past, and they also help us open new horizons through continual learning. For the Illinoisans of today, museums are vital because lifelong learning is our never-ending frontier. Thank you.
Few institutions have a more long-range impact on Illinois than its major public university. As a result of Stanley O. Eikenberry's leadership and vision, the University of Illinois has taken tremendous strides in addressing the educational needs of our state and in attaining the stature of a world-class institution. Governor Edgar, I am proud and very pleased to present Stanley O. Eikenberry as a laureate of the Lincoln Academy.
Appointed president of the University of Illinois in 1979, Stanley Eikenberry led the university through a period of intense academic and physical growth, while emerging as one of the nation's outstanding university presidents and a leader in higher education worldwide. A respected statesman for education, Eikenberry is a strong believer in universities taking an active role in improving the quality of life of the people they serve. He attributes much of his success at the state's flagship university to the quality of the institution and its people.
The University of Illinois is a great place, and I think for me it was very difficult to imagine wanting to go anyplace else. I think part of the uniqueness of a college or a university is the large number of constituencies that are involved. We are, in a way, more of a community than we are an institution. Certainly, I think you begin with the students, and every year they're new, every year their interests are somewhat different. But the faculty as well, the staff, as in any large corporate type setting. The interesting thing, though, is that there are many stakeholders out across the society in the university. Our alumni obviously are interested, but corporate America is interested in the health of higher education, and certainly that's been true here in Illinois. Illinois agriculture has a major stake, but virtually every profession in the state, from medicine to accounting to architecture to law to nursing to social work, has a very real stake on what goes on at the University of Illinois. So in that sense, it's a very complex tapestry that links the University of Illinois with the people of this state.
Noted for his political finesse, Eikenberry picked out the individual threads of that tapestry and encouraged others to share the overall vision.
He was very, very gifted at taking complicated situations in terms of policy decision-making, reduced them to their important elements, which then made it easy to communicate to a legislator or a governor or to a corporate person or to any person that he was discussing the issue with in ways that were understandable and they were convincing.
Most of the time they're synergistic. For example, a high-quality, absolutely superb undergraduate education is very important long-term to the quality of research and public service in the state. Great programs, for example, in mathematics and physics and chemistry also bode well for a top-quality, first-ranked School of Engineering. Great programs in biology, for example, mean that it's an awful lot easier to have a top-ranked College of Agriculture. We've tried to focus in two ways, really. One, trying to make the University of Illinois uniformly good in everything that we attempt and work on. And at the same time, we've not hesitated to try to pick out and target very special areas of emphasis. I would cite, for example, the Beckman Institute for Advanced Science and Technology, which is really very remarkable kind of program that is unique to the University of Illinois. It's an interdisciplinary advanced graduate education and research program that brings senior scholars from all across the university. It's been very instrumental in allowing us to recruit top scholars from across the country and is now recognized, I think, throughout the United States as a very special place. But I would also cite, for example, the work we're doing in microelectronics, the National Center for Supercomputing Applications, and our Great Cities program in Chicago.
The strategy paid off in unprecedented growth for the Urbana campus in new programs and new construction. There was the recent addition of the Springfield campus, but many believe the strongest test of Eikenberry's leadership resulted in his greatest success.
In Chicago, he created the Chicago campus. At the time that he did that, the tenets of the Urbana campus and the Chicago Medical campus were against that. The old Circle campus was supportive of it. In spite of that, as a brand new president, brand new board, he had a vision of what it is that needed to be done in Chicago to make that a higher quality institution, and he did it. So his influence on Chicago and his contributions are enormous. As I've told him, I think that'll be the thing that will be his greatest contribution.
If the facts, the rationale, the goodwill underlying all of that basically have integrity to them, I found that sooner or later a consensus ordinarily is achieved. But it wasn't easy in Chicago. A university is a very peculiar place too, in the sense that we operate on consensus. That's for good or ill, that is the coin of the realm. And in Chicago, being able to achieve the understanding and the support of all the diverse interests on campus simply was something that had to be done, and ultimately we were lucky and able to getting it done.
The University of Illinois is also reaffirming its public character in Chicago, where the Great Cities program is using the university's many strengths to meet society's major challenges in urban America.
It is now making a real difference in Chicago in a number of areas. I think most notably that comes to my mind is the reform movement in elementary and secondary education that's taking place in the Chicago public schools. But for example, making Chicago a safe city and dealing with issues related to criminal justice, making Chicago a productive city as it relates to employment and productivity and the health of the economic sector in Chicago.
The outreach, the linkage to our society, the issues of Illinois are going to be high on the agenda of this president, but it bears on the leadership of President Eikenberry as well. He had a very positive influence on me, I hope.
Eikenberry believes credit for his success at the University of Illinois belongs with Judy Eikenberry and a wonderful family, plus being associated with a quality place and quality people. He remains active in the public policy debates on education, chairing the governor's recent task force on school funding, and as the new president of the American Council on Education. There, he'll tackle issues like access and affordability, while reaching out to talented minorities and other underrepresented groups in higher education.
Hopefully I'll be able to do some interesting things as the years go by at the American Council on Education. I had a great set of experiences at Penn State and at West Virginia University and Michigan State and elsewhere, but nothing will compare, I'm sure, with our memories and our continuing commitment to the University of Illinois. It's a marvelous, marvelous university and a great opportunity for our family personally to have been associated with it.
There is a wonderful copy of a 1916 edition of the ILIO, the University of Illinois yearbook, that resides in my new office, and in its front pages it carries a dedication of the yearbook for that year that seemed to me to be particularly appropriate this evening. It reads, "Powerful, wonderful, splendid is our state, Illinois, but in the power to give a great man or woman birth and to rear him or her up to greatness, therein lies the real test of a state." And so it is true, and it is that commitment not just to Illinois as a great state, but to Illinois as a magnificent people, that I'm very pleased to accept this honor, not just on my behalf, but I am sure on behalf of the institution that you honor as well, the University of Illinois. Thank you very much.
The Lincoln Academy is created to honor extraordinary individuals with ties to the state of Illinois, as well as those who have dedicated themselves to the principles of democracy and humanity exemplified by Abraham Lincoln. On both counts, Jean J. Kirkpatrick has earned her place as a Lincoln Laureate. When Mrs. Kirkpatrick was appointed as U.S. Permanent Representative to the United Nations in 1981, she became the first woman to hold the post. She later remarked that she had accepted her appointment, quotes, "because I take the duties of citizenship seriously." Lincoln would have said the same thing. Governor Edgar, it is my pleasure to present Jean J. Kirkpatrick as a laureate of the Lincoln Academy.
The historic Appellate Court Building is a familiar landmark in Mount Vernon, Illinois. Abraham Lincoln practiced law there before his fortunes were forever tied to those of the nation he served as its 16th president. Lincoln's devotion to country and love of learning made a lasting impression on a young woman whose family followed the oil boom to Mount Vernon in 1941. Jean Jordan attended high school there, where she learned traditional American values.
I think I was just learned, I was always taught to do my duty. I was always taught to, the Ten Commandment kinds of things, honor my father and mother, and God, and do my homework well, always do my best, work hard, I was always very filled with admiration for scholarship and knowledge and wisdom, and I greatly admired Thomas Jefferson, James Madison, George Washington, and I greatly admired Abraham Lincoln. In Illinois, I learned a great deal more about Abraham Lincoln than I had before. I think that Lincoln was a man of colossal knowledge and wisdom, self-taught to be sure, with a great style in his writing and his speech, and of real moral strength and integrity, character. And I admire him tremendously.
Jean was a good student, a very good student, a top student, rather intellectual. She was quite active in drama, in some of the plays, including an old-fashioned melodrama, and also in publications. She was editor of the newspaper, the student newspaper. She excelled in English and of course, journalism and speech and history, the social studies, pretty much. There's a story that one of our classmates tells about inviting Jean to go out for an evening with some of the classmates. Now, this was probably after high school graduation, and she said no, she was reading the Federalist Papers, and she thought she would just stay home and read that night.
Thriving in the academic world, she earned an international reputation in political science. A prolific writer on foreign affairs and government, the Georgetown professor and senior fellow at the American Enterprise Institute never expected to hold any public office. That's why a phone call from President-elect Ronald Reagan came as a surprise.
He said, "How are you, Jean?" I said, "Fine, how are you, Mr. President-elect?" And he said, "I'll be better if you will agree to be my UN ambassador and a member of my cabinet." And my response to that, I may have told you, was, "I'm not sure I can do that job, Mr. President." And he said, "I am. And I really want you to do that for me." And so I said, if he was, if he felt certain I could do it, then I would be happy to try. And that's how I became the UN ambassador. We talked quite a bit, and I understood that he wanted me to defend our principles and our interests, make the case for democracy, make the case for free market, because he believed that the only road to development was a free market road to development.
Members of the Council, in his letter requesting this meeting, the coordinator of
the United States was in very bad shape at the UN when I arrived there, quite frankly. The United States was isolated and humiliated at will, really. It happened all the time. We were outvoted. We were so sort of helpless in the UN arena that even our best friends didn't want to associate with us. They preferred to keep a certain distance. And the challenge to me was to try to build the U.S. position inside the UN so that we could be more effective.
Tensions ran high in the final years of the Cold War. Both sides stockpiled tens of thousands of nuclear weapons and built up their conventional arsenals as well.
I think it was a dangerous time, and I think that it was more dangerous than most people understood. But it also was clear that we had to do absolutely everything possible to prevent conflict from erupting out of disagreement.
The ambassador's skills were put to the test in 1983 when the Soviet Union shot down a Korean Airlines jumbo jet.
The Soviet government has not been silent about the plane, however. It has merely lied.
With the world politics being what it was not at all certain that the Soviet Union would even be reproached for that or condemned in any way, and or even forced to veto a resolution that would condemn them. And I worked very hard with the U.S. mission and others, and Japan and Korea, and on that. And basically, we were able to at least secure a condemnation in the Security Council of that really terrible action, and that was gratifying to me because that hadn't happened for many, many, many years.
Kirkpatrick believes history will recognize President Reagan's role in ending the Cold War.
There is the prospect of not only a new era in Soviet-American relations, but a new age of world peace.
President Reagan really provided the leadership, not just for the United States, but for the Western world, really, that I think brought an end to the Cold War after decades of Cold War. Mikhail Gorbachev deserves some credit for that, I want to say, but Ronald Reagan deserves a very great deal of credit for creating the context in which that could happen. It was very wonderful to be part of that effort, I might say. It was a fantastic educational experience for me about the world, because the UN is a place where you have a vision of the whole world, you have perspective on the whole world. I learned about how nations deal with each other and who deals with whom, and it doesn't necessarily always coincide with the public images, in fact. And I learned a lot about how American government works, and I really emerged, I think, much more knowledgeable about both our government and the world than I went into it, much more knowledgeable.
Honored many times over for her scholarship and public service, Kirkpatrick enjoys returning to her roots in Illinois and the pleasures of family life.
My greatest satisfactions, personal satisfactions, have been with my family. My greatest pleasures have been with my family, my husband and my 3 sons, my parents, my brother. I'm a very family-oriented person. I've liked some of it, and I've had a wonderful time in some vacations with my husband and with my family. I like to cook, and succeeding at a perfect souffle is pretty satisfying too. Lincoln, Abraham Lincoln, is perhaps the president whose life and whose performance as president most embody distinctive virtues of American citizenship, in fact. I admire Lincoln so much I couldn't resist being associated with a Lincoln Academy and receiving a Lincoln Medal. I have in my office a bust of Abraham Lincoln. I have a complete works of Abraham Lincoln all the time, and I read them. The state of Illinois was very good to me and to my family, and I feel very fortunate to have been, for a very important period of my life, a citizen of the state of Illinois, and I thank you very much.
Sid Luckman has been called a true American hero and the greatest quarterback that ever lived. Probably no one has brought greater glory to the football fields of Illinois than Mr. Luckman. I'd like to read from a letter from the late George Hallis, Sid's coach, and much like a father to Sid. And in the letter he said, "My boy, my pride in you has no bounds. You were the consummate player. You added a luster to my life that will never tarnish." Well, Sid, you added that luster to a great many lives, and for that we thank you. Governor Edgar, it gives me great pleasure to present to you a true champion, Lincoln Academy laureate, Mr. Sid Luckman.
As a player for the Chicago Bears for 12 seasons, Sid Luckman broke record after record, leading the Bears to 4 national championships. In 1940, as starting quarterback, number 42 led the Bears to a 73-0 victory over the Washington Redskins, the most one-sided championship game in NFL history. Off the field, Sid Luckman became a successful businessman who shared his good fortune with others in civic life and charity. The kid who played football for hours on the cobblestones of Brooklyn owes it all to the game.
I just loved the idea of so many different things you could do. You could run, you could pass, you could block, you could tackle, you could call signals. It was a challenge to be a football player, especially in high school and in college and with the pros. Never, as I think back and reflect upon my life, did I ever one day dream that I would ever be a high school, college, or professional football player. I didn't strive for that because I didn't think there was any possibility, but I still worked as hard as I could. And the final thing is, which the culmination of my football career was as a football player, and that's where I wanted to be.
Luckman became the country's top passer at Columbia University in 1938, bringing him to the attention of Chicago Bears founder George Papa Bear Halas.
When he signed me to that contract and turned to Mrs. Luckman and said, "I'll see that Sid makes it, I promise you." He did more than any other man could possibly do to have me achieve what he wanted me to reach and where I wanted to go. We were inseparable. He was, to me, not only a coach, not only a great friend, but only as a second father.
I was a sports writer at that time and spending a lot of time covering the Bears, and naturally I had a close relationship with Mr. Halas, and Mr. Halas called on various friends, not only me, but to meet Sid, because he sensed that Sid's going to be a big star. He had a feeling that Sid was just the ideal man to play the new position of quarterback in the T formation. And Sid was the originally great T formation quarterback. He set the pattern for all the other T formation quarterbacks that came along that followed in his footsteps. He was a master on the field. He was almost like a coach on the field. He knew the plays, everybody's signals, and he was the closest thing to having a coach on the field with you.
He was a very improvisational type of quarterback, a very athletic quarterback who not only had the good sense of the field, but also of his defenders and his own teammates. And when you combine those instincts and athletic ability, you really get a full package. And when Sid and Halas sort of contrived this T formation and the famous bingo keep it, they did it based on Sid's knowledge of the game and his ability to improvise in the position, which he excelled in dramatically.
When you look back to professional football, the greatest era in professional football history was a change from all the other systems, Pop Warner's system, Knute Rockne Notre Dame system, Fielding Yost punt formation system, Jock Sutherland single wing system. We revolutionized the game of football. It was the Chicago Bears, the only team using the T in that era, the only team that was just absolutely devastating on the field, the only team to be as successful as they were 4 and 6 years. And now, to this very day, think about this. Every team in the United States is using the T formation.
Luckman and the Bears were awesome against the Washington Redskins in the 1940 championship game. The win, 73-0. The blowout came after Redskins owner George Marshall made the mistake of calling the Bears crybabies in the newspaper.
He said, "Gentlemen, you know that I know you're the greatest football team in our nation. You know that I know. We have to prove it, not only to ourselves, but to the Redskins, to George Marshall, to his organization, and to the nation, that you are the greatest football team. There's one door out the exit to get into the stadium. Everybody on that team was running out of that dressing room, out of that locker room to get into the stadium, onto the stand and play. The end result, we beat them 73-0 for the World Championship Super Bowl, which will never again, ever be equaled. It's considered the greatest game played by any one team in the history of football."
Luckman led the Bears to 3 more championships in 1941, 1943, and 1946, before retiring in 1950. Luckman stayed with the Bears organization as a coach and executive while carving out a successful career as a businessman widely recognized for his interest in charity work. Luckman was enshrined in the Pro Football Hall of Fame in 1965, and much earlier than that, in the hearts of those lucky enough to know him as a friend.
It's remarkable how his name, even though he hasn't played in many, many years, his name is still regarded as one of the best-known names in football. And I can say that as a friend, he also has that same caliber.
I haven't come across a human being who is as generous, who is as affectionate as Sid is. He's everything that you would want your father to be and for your daughter to date. To put it in simplistic terms, Sid has represented not only the people of Chicago well, but the Bears organization. And God bless his soul. He deserved every accolade that he received as a football player, and furthermore as a business person.
If there was anything in the world that could ever replace the years that I played for the Chicago Bears, the camaraderie, the friendship, the emotion of winning, which is tremendous, the terrible, terrible letdown of losing. And when we won, Coach Howard said, we won. Not any individual, we won as a team. We represent the greatest city in the United States, Chicago. We love Chicago. Chicago's got to be proud of what you've done for them, and you've got to be proud of that you were able to do something, not only for yourself, but for our organization and for the city. And he always said one very important thing. There isn't anybody on his team that's an I. Everybody on his team is a we. We're one for all and all for one.
I guess it's probably one of the greatest honors of my life to stand here before you this evening. The good Lord has blessed me with some wonderful things. So from the bottom of my heart, I thank you all so very, very much for one of the most blessed events in my life and one that I will never forget in the twilight years of my life. Thank you, and God bless you all. Thank you.
As director of the Argonne National Laboratory in Argonne, Illinois, Alan Schriesheim's vision and leadership has shaped that institution into what is now a world-renowned applied science center that we all know. In addition, he has nurtured the scientists of tomorrow through his dedication to education and training. In recognition for all of his contributions to science, past, present, and I'm sure in the future, it is my pleasure, Governor Edgar, to present Alan Schriesheim, a star in science leadership, as a laureate of the Lincoln Academy of Illinois.
Argonne National Laboratory traces its roots to the University of Chicago, where Enrico Fermi and his colleagues achieved the world's first self-sustaining, controlled chain reaction. More than a half-century later, the laboratory southwest of Chicago remains at the forefront of U.S. scientific and technological research in fields as diverse as high-temperature superconductors to virtual reality. With the development of the advanced photon source synchrotron, its future as an international center for science promises to be as bright as the many young people invited to the laboratory over the years by Dr. Alan Schriesheim. Schriesheim directed Argonne from 1983 to 1996, making him the longest-serving director in Argonne history.
Well, I was always had a fascination with science from the time that I was a little kid growing up in New York. I suppose you could say the genes were chemistry genes. I had
a long love affair with chemistry that dates back, I don't know, to ever since I can remember as a kid. Chemistry sets, going into chemical supply houses, conducting experiments at home. So for me, it really was not a matter of considering a number of alternate career paths, because I always had my heart, I guess, if you will, or my genes set on becoming a chemist.
Schriesheim believes science should serve a societal purpose, and that large, one-of-a-kind facilities are needed to study the wide range of substantive quality-of-life issues that can only be addressed by science and technology.
As an example, global climate change. Is it true that the climate is actually changing as a result of man-made emissions? What kind of evidence is there for it? How do we gather that evidence? And it turns out that there are such a large amount of data that's required for that we have to develop advanced computing programs in order to interpret the data. This kind of research is the appropriate kind of research for this institution, since it would be very difficult to convince stockholders of a company that that kind of information would be appropriate for any company to gather.
Schriesheim arrived at Argonne from Exxon Corporation in 1983 amid rumors the lab might close. Colleagues credit him with building the team that secured Argonne's future by studying national issues that needed long-term scientific and technological solutions.
Alan is a great believer in playing the biggest game as you can possibly play. If you're going to do science, do it for large stakes. Do things that really mean something. If you're going to recruit a scientist, recruit someone who has the potential for winning a Nobel Prize or who is essentially almost there, okay? If you're going to build a facility, build it to be the best possible facility of its sort in the world. Not the best possible facility of its sort in Illinois or in the United States, but make it world-class. And then fill it with world-class people. So one of the things I think that more than any other laboratory director I know, and I know most of the laboratory directors, Alan really thinks large thoughts and then tries to populate those thoughts with people that fit them.
We developed a set of themes: nuclear theme, environmental theme, major facility theme, and then individual projects are hung off needles through the thread of the theme, so that the projects look different, but if you look at the theme, you find that they fit in with those general themes. Thank you for coming to what I guess could be called an evangelical revival tent meeting, groundbreaking for the advanced photon source.
The strategy paid off in the advanced photon source synchrotron, which produces X-ray beams so bright that scientists will be able to see how individual atoms organize and watch them in the process of change. A variety of researchers coming from fields such as chemistry, biology, materials science, and medical research will use these beams to study the properties of materials underlying the science and technology in each of their fields. Take structural biology, for example.
A theme, if you will, that became apparent was a theme that involved biochemistry, biophysics, biomaterials. And the individual projects then, the Human Genome Project, Biostructural Project, are hung like threads off that theme.
Structural biology is essentially understanding the three-dimensional structure of the molecules that go to make up biology. It's really what makes your blue eyes blue is structural biology, okay? If you understand it and if you learn how structure is dictated, you can learn how to change structure. Why is that important? Because if you can learn how to change structure and how to alter the functionality of structures, you can control things like the actions of hormones. You can develop new drugs for metabolic diseases that we presently can't control at all. You can develop really pharmaceuticals by design, not by guesswork.
I consider it, Jack, to be absolutely typical of the way a research organization that is continuously evolving and changing and generating new ideas and new projects should act. We should continuously have more initiatives than we can conceivably get funded, for example.
Similar themes developed in nuclear power, leading to the inherently safe integral fast reactor and environmental research around many issues. Argonne defined its position as the largest federally funded center in advanced high-temperature superconductors. Argonne combines supercomputing power and cutting-edge biology to create a virtual reality world where scientists are working to find new cures for disease. Argonne is thriving as a result, with scientists from many fields coming together to address some of the nation's greatest concerns. Growing new scientists is another Argonne effort, with everything from summer programs for talented kids to postdoctoral studies. Schriesheim wants young people to have an appreciation for science, its benefits as a career, and its importance to the national welfare.
It's important that the citizens of this country know enough about science or science and technology so that they can make informed decisions, so that they don't have to use a Ouija board or check the astrological tables in the morning to find out what's up, that they can actually look at a newspaper or understand a TV program when they talk about the implications of science. It's very important for our society. So anything that we can do, that I can do personally, that exposes people when they're young to science, mathematics, and engineering, just so they can be informed citizens, I consider important. Our challenge is to educate ourselves and the general public to understand the rewards that science produces today and the promise that science holds for tomorrow. Governor Edgar, members of the Lincoln Academy, Jack, I accept the high honor you bestow upon me today with trust that you, like me, look to the world of the future with hope, with optimism, and above all, without fear. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Governor, Jim Edgar.
Thank you. Thank you. The men and women we honor tonight represent the dedication, the determination, and the will we all have somewhere deep within us. They are Illinoisans who achieved much in their lives, but who have given so much more in return. They are men and women respected and admired throughout the world. Women like Jean Kirkpatrick, who represented her country as ambassador to the United Nations and who served her country as a member of the National Security Council. Titans in science and education, like Dr. Alan Schriesheim, who has guided the Argonne National Laboratory into a world-class center of applied science. And like Stan Eikenberry, who during 15 years secured the University of Illinois' position of world leadership in many academic and research fields. The giants in culture and humanities, such as Sandy Boyd, the president of the Field Museum of Natural History, who has ensured the museums maintain its rightful position of leadership in culture and scientific history research. And the heroes of Illinois sports arena, men like Hall of Famer Sid Luckman, who led the Bears to 4 NFL championships and now is renowned for his work on the behalf of others. We are proud of them, just as we are proud of all the other men and women who now wear the Order of Lincoln. And I hope they are equally proud of Illinois. The accomplishments of these sons and daughters of Illinois should excite others about education, about ambition, and about success. Their achievements should encourage others to excel. The best in us will prevail, as it always has. Together, let us confront the challenges, dare to be bold, and do the right thing to assure the best of Illinois prevails. Thank you.
Shot and shell